Awesome. Okay, so as I was saying, the name of the podcast is The Big Questions. And the first and biggest question, in my personal opinion, is the one I'm about to ask you here. Who are you?
Who am I? A flood of teachings came in terms of where I begin with all that. But I guess I'll begin with how we usually introduce ourselves when we meet people for the first time or in large groups. I start off by introducing myself in my language.
Mhm.
Wabski minutes is it Misatem Nisnakas, Bijuni do them, Iskunaning donji, Treaty 2 territory. Nishnabeni. What I just said there was my spirit name is White Spotted Horse. I'm of the Lynx clan of Scout First Nation and Treaty 2 territory, which is part of Manitoba, Saskatchewan on a treaty map. And I'm Anishinaabe. My common name is Alan Sutherland. So that's usually what we do when we meet each other,
Mhm.
is that we introduce ourselves in that way. When you go further, you ask, describe your community. So I grew up in Scout First Nation, a small reserve in the southern part of Manitoba in the Interlake. So my environment is in the south of us would be the agricultural belt, but just where we live, it would be the boreal forest, surrounded by all kinds of lakes. That's where I grew up. So that's how usually people will identify with each other. They'll even go further and say, who raised you?
Mhm.
And I was raised by my grandparents, Gilbert and Hilda Nipanak. And the thing about history was this is probably one of the topics we're going to get into, is that my grandparents, because of Canadian laws, was not allowed to raise their own children. That at the age of 5, the law says you have to hand them over to government. In this case, they go to residential schools. Now, by the time 1970 came, um, I was able to move from Winnipeg to go and live with my grandparents who wanted to raise me. So by 1970, they rescinded that Indian Act law that you can now have the children that you're looking after can go to local schools. And in my case, I was bused to just outside the reserve, 10 miles away on a bus. Now, for my grandparents, this is the first time they're raising a child. So for me, struggling in the inner city of Winnipeg, this was a tremendous change to be raised in the value systems of my people, which is the great thing.
Mhm.
But even in this short introduction, I shared with you quite a bit. And usually, sometimes introductions don't go that far. It just usually means where you're from and who's your family.
Yeah. Well, I asked this question of all my guests, and the answers I get range from very straightforward, logistical, my name is this, and this is what I do, to, I mean, I've had some people go real deep. So, I mean, I always love asking that question because it reveals a lot about a person, what they tell you when you ask them who they are. And I think your answer was, again, very revealing, very insightful, and touched on a lot of things that I want to talk to you about today in this episode. So thank you for
Okay,
that wonderful introduction.
you're welcome.
So the first thing that really piqued my interest and something that I'd like to get into further, and again, this is very educational for me. Like I speak to people from all walks of life, people that I may normally not get a chance to interact with, and so I ask a lot of questions. I do apologize if some of these questions are self-evident or they seem like they're a bit redundant. But the first thing that I would like to ask you about is your spirit name and the tradition of having a spirit name. I think that's very interesting to me. And I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on that, and how does it work? Who gives you your spirit name, or is it something you come upon yourself, or what's the tradition behind that?
You would find today that like my English name is Alan Sutherland. Most Indigenous people will have an European name. because there was a time when we didn't have European names. We had our language names, and they're reflective of our time on Earth. In other words, our earthly journey. So you could be named in anything on Earth in that environment. In my case here, white spotted horse represents who I am in this lifeline. White spotted has a lot of meaning, and when you get an interpretation of that meaning, some will vary, but over time, I have come to the conclusion that it means imprinted, not so much painted horse
Mhm.
or the spots of horse. It was more in emphasizing who I am. It has a meaning in terms of I leave an impression.
Mm.
Like I travel light, I travel everywhere. I leave behind an impression. So the meaning in the language is it kind of fit more to that.
Mhm.
Now, white is one of our. We talked about your map behind you. We talked about north and south. Now, in many traditions throughout Turtle Island, what we call North America, white represents the north, and like in a medicine wheel, such as what I'm wearing here.
Yeah.
So, so white is are in four quadrants, where yellow is like where the sun rises.
Mhm.
So you start from there, and then you go around the circle, like the sun will travel around. So the next color, and this varies with different tribes, different nations. So red would be the next color, representing south.
Mhm.
And then there'll be west. Could be black, could be a very dark blue. But when it comes to the white, each has a teaching, and the white represents wisdom.
Ah.
So your name gives you a lot of meaning. When you get a spirit name, it's usually done when you were born within the year. It's usually done by ceremony, by an elder, or through ceremonies where you go to a sweat lodge, or they do a dark room ceremony using a pipe. Or he says, "You leave me your tobacco and I'll dream on it."
Mm.
So you, for a little while, once the dream comes, they'll share. This is your name. So there's many ways to receive a spirit name, but this practice of receiving a spirit name was almost gone at
Mm.
one point. Growing up in my community called Scout First Nation, they didn't at those days they used to call it Indian names. In other
Mm.
words, your traditional Indian, and nobody didn't really had Indian names because we're all either an Allen or Oliver or Susan or Mary and so forth, right?
Mm.
So my I was ill at one time, and as a child I used to have migraines, and I was taken to a medicine man. And the ceremony, he I don't get migraines ever since that time.
Mhm.
But in the process, he gave me a spirit name. At the time, it was White Cloud,
Mm.
and so time went on. In a community where we don't practice these traditions, time went on, and you forget
Mm.
until a friend of mine wanted a spirit name. I says, I know elders, I know people, so let's go arrange it. So we go and do a ceremony. Then I asked for my spirit name because I forgot.
Mhm.
I forgot I already had one as a child. So in the process of the ceremony, then the memory started flooding back. That's how the mind works. The subconscious stores all your life experience. And sometimes it's held in a little box until you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. All of a sudden I realized I already have a spirit name, but we're going through the process. I want to share that later. That was a time that the elder, as an adult, gave me a name, White Spotted Horse. Since then, I receive another name in the work that I do when it comes to ceremony. So I got another one, and that one I don't share that in public because I wanted just to keep the what do you call it, the essence of the work that I do. and do healing and ceremonies. That's how I communicate to the spiritual world. This through me, that name alone, not
Right.
public, like white spotted horse. So to answer your question, these things are starting to make a comeback in terms of reclaiming our identity. But it was laws that took these things away in the first place. Did you know in Canada by legally you have to have a surname?
Hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah, you can't have that one name like Prince or Cher
Yeah.
or Drake for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they all have their surnames. They
Yes.
just publicly celebrity, right?
Alter
But
egos.
legally
Yeah.
in Canada, you can't have one name.
Wow. I did not know that.
And and I heard stories of newcomers that came to our country, then they changed names. They changed names
Yeah.
when they first arrived.
Yeah.
So it's not just Indigenous people that was impacted by these laws.
Yeah, you meet a lot of
Uh,
people from say India and stuff, and it's like their name is Steve, but that's not their name. That's what they go
no,
by, and I
yeah,
don't know if it's a matter of convenience. It's just easier to change your name to something that people can understand and pronounce. But it's a shame because I mean, it'd be nice to know people's real names. Whether it's
well,
one name or surname or whatever.
French names or Irish names or Scottish names were changed because the person that was trying to put you in a book, record you, would change it on the spot because they couldn't pronounce it or they Englishsize it.
That's what I
So
do with
I
my
heard all,
name.
huh?
My name's Olivier. I'm from Montreal. I'm a French person, but I just
Yeah.
go by Oliver because people see my name spelled with that extra I, and it just
Ah,
woo, Olivier. Like they just can't wrap their heads around it. So it's like Oliver is good enough.
yeah. And that's my point exactly.
Yeah.
But it was laws that were existing. Is also who's involved with those kind of changes. Now, in your residential schools, children that only had their language names in Cree or Ojibwe, they were changed on the spot when they arrived at the Indian residential school. So basically, some stories I heard was they had all these names on a blackboard. So that there was boys, there was girls, and without not understanding the language, he basically says, "Go pick one,
Wow.
point at one," and then I end up having like John. A lot of places they had is pick a name from the Bible.
Wow.
So a lot of our people would have like John, Mary, and
Yeah,
Peter,
Matthew and yeah, wow. And
and
I
and then
imagine, yeah, that's another subject altogether, your outlook and relationship with the church, but we'll get to that.
but one other thing is that during treaty they can't pronounce our name, so when you go for treaty days at the time, the gift of the crown was $5, and they say, "What's your name?" And they couldn't write it out. Every year they had the same problem.
Hmm.
In one day, they even picked last names. The say Stevenson. There's a guy named Stevenson at the trading post. He's
Mhm.
the only guy in the whole area, the whole territory. So all the descendants were called Stevensons.
Jeez, how terrible.
So John Stevenson or Mary
Wow.
Stevenson. So yeah, there's a lot of history, and most Canadians don't know, but they're familiar with it. They don't know about the laws that affected or had that impact on Indigenous people throughout the ages.
Yeah. So why don't you take my audience through kind of a quick tour of those laws? I know you mentioned already the Indian Act. That sounds like it was one of the major ones. Like what were some of the laws that they put into place, and how many of them are still in place? Because I understand that some of them still are, which is mind-boggling to me.
Well, for your audience, and I don't know if you knew this, but I teach all this history.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It's all there in cold notes of,
Yeah, if
of
it can
two
be done. Yeah.
timelines.
Yeah.
But essentially, it talks about why is there a gap today? Why is there a gap today?
Hmm.
But all these laws that are dividing that red line
Yeah.
with the Canadian timeline,
Yeah.
is essentially under the Indian Act. A lot of it is under the Indian Act.
Wow.
And did you know that the Indian Act still exists?
That's what I wanted you to confirm for me. You mentioned that in the presentation that you gave, and I was shocked and a little bit outraged to hear that, because that's the act that they use to take away your names and put you in residential schools and all of that stuff, right?
Essentially take your identity away.
Yeah.
Everything except the blood of an Indian.
Yeah, they tried to destroy your culture, which is again your identity, right? I mean, like it's your and your language as well. I mean, people who study languages, they'll tell you your language is a reality. And so me being bilingual, I really can tell I switch in between realities. When I start speaking in French, my vocabulary changes, the way I'm thinking changes. It's a different reality. So they essentially were trying to wipe out your reality. That's what they were trying to do.
We call it the worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Our worldview, our lens is how we see the world, the universe, as you will,
Mm-hmm.
is our worldview. Everybody has a worldview.
Yeah.
So I say to people today, even if you call yourselves Canadians or Ontarians or Manitobans and or Winnipeggers or Brandonites, that's your environment. That's where you grew up in. That's the education system. That's where you work. That's where your family is. But when it comes to the Indigenous people themselves, they may live in those cities or those provinces, but their worldview hasn't changed.
Mm.
So majority of Canadians can apprehend that. But newcomers that come to the country, or in your case here, the French nation that deals with the English world, you do have your sense of your own worldview based on your language or how you're raised, your
Yeah.
environment. So when it comes to Indigenous people, when you're mistreated in such a way, or you didn't feel like you belong, you're still going to have that feeling.
Yeah.
Even if you live in two generations in Vancouver, you're still going to feel that way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, because of the things that were done in the past, and this is something else that came up. One of our colleagues shared her story, and she talked about how certain people will say, "Well, listen, you didn't go to a residential school, so how's it affecting you?" What kind of question is that? You think it's kind of like with people in the US talking about black folks, well, slavery was over 200 years ago, get over it or whatever. It's like this is intergenerational. If you do something like that to a group of people 200 years ago, those people raise the next generation, and that next generation raise, and that trauma, that injustice, the damage that was done is passed forward until something is done to actually address the original trauma and help people process and integrate it. So it's mind-boggling to me that anyone can think, well, this was over a long time ago, or it didn't happen to you, therefore this stuff is foundational. It dictates everything that
Yeah,
comes after it, you know.
I've been doing diversity training or Indigenous awareness for over 20 years.
Wow.
And people show up because they only know what they know,
Mm-hmm.
which is very limited a lot of times. What we try to do and do sessions is to expand that by saying, have an open mind and have a look at this. Then we get into talking about how this came about, what was Indian residential schools, lost identity. Imagine that if it was your own child who's 4 years old, who's not even 5 yet, but close enough, was taken out of your home and you'd be sent off 100 or 200 miles away. And you will not see that child for the next 10 years. But that child's life is traumatic, automatically only knows its own language. And then all of a sudden, you're going to be punished for not speaking their language. Now, trauma is the most common thing that went on, and it hasn't been addressed yet. But I shock people by saying that those changes only recently.
Mm.
They stopped enforcing that law in 1970, but it takes a lot of years to build schools in their communities.
Yeah.
The way treaties was supposed to be. We'll build you a school in your communities with a schoolmaster.
Yeah.
So it ended up that every time you can close an Indian residential school, you can build a school in their community, you can close down an Indian residential school nearby. So the last Indian residential school was closed in 1997. This is not
Unreal.
ancient history.
Not at all.
But Canadians are starting to come to a fact that something terrible happened because it was a deliberate attempt to hide it from all Canadians. So they wasn't taught in schools. So they're shocked when they start hearing more recent things. Why is there idle no more? Why are people protesting in the streets? What's that all about? But after a while, you get an apology from the Prime Minister saying, we're sorry, we're in residential schools. What's that all about? So when they find these children, these unmarked graves at any residential school, people are shocked. What is this all about? So they're starting to awaken to the fact that maybe Canada wasn't so perfect the way they project themselves to the world. Maybe there was things called genocide. If anything, culture genocide or ethnocide, but genocide just the same.
Mm-hmm.
We are living in an era of just coming around to the fact that I didn't know. I didn't know. So part of reconciliation is let us help you understand that this is together, this is our country. Together, this is should have been taught long time ago. Together, let's learn. Let's reconcile what took place. But together, let's move to a better place.
Yeah, that's a beautiful vision and a beautiful goal. And I hope that we'll get there. I mean, it certainly seems like there's been some steps made. Like you said, the fact that people are more and more aware of it, that's the truth piece, right? I mean, that's revealing the truth of the situation. What I'm interested in, as in addition to the truth, is the reconciliation piece and what that actually looks like. Because you said the Prime Minister apologized for residential schools. Right on. Show, don't tell. You say you're sorry, show us that you're sorry. What does that actually look like, Alan? What does reconciliation look like? What does it look like for us to be actually together as one nation, as was originally intended, as you said?
Well, you have to back up before that apology took place.
Yeah.
In 1990, Indigenous people are protesting. That was the year of Meech Lake, the constitutional crisis with Quebec, and now the Indigenous people. Then you had the Oka crisis.
Yeah.
And then you had all the shutdowns of bridges and railroads. And what's going up with that? Well, that was really to get people's attention, is that you shake things up to get people's attention. But now government had to say, what are we going to do? We can't keep doing this year to year. It's not going to get us anywhere. So they say, well, let's address the impact of Indian residential schools. There are 80,000 plus people living that went through that experience. The only way that Canada deals with such matters is that one, you take the one that did harm to you to court.
Yeah.
And that was going on. There was these court cases throughout. Churches were being dragged in court cases and lawsuits, and they're losing.
Yeah.
And that was going to go on for years and years and years. So that was one way how you address these kind of things. The other one is like a class action. Is a compensation for the group that's been harmed, and that was created with at the time was national chief was Phil Fontaine, with one of the Supreme Court judges, in terms of how can you expedite this without reliving your experience in courts, which is very intrusive, very aggressive.
Yeah.
To talk to somebody who says you're a liar, you're making this up.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So there was compensation that was given out to all that experienced this directly. And that was the beginning. Over time, there's going to be others that has to address day schools or 60 scope and so forth, because there was a lot of things that happened. So that's the way Canada addresses such things. But along the way, the judge and everybody else is saying, Canada should formally apologize for their action of creating these laws. And like you said, children are universal. They universally know what's right and wrong. If somebody apologized to you, what you're looking for is that, are they sincere?
Mm-hmm.
Do they make, do they, or no, do they or do, you know, are they going to change their behavior?
Yeah.
You know, you're looking for action. Did they mean it? Right? And really, it was hollow.
Yeah.
It was like transferring one government that says we're going to plan on apology. Then there was a shift of government, and this government now says, "What? It's in our hands. What are we going to do? Well, let's apologize."
Hmm.
But the spirit wasn't there.
Yeah.
So what you had was a status quo that went on again until situations have to develop in order to get the attention of all Canadians that there's something wrong. There's something here you have to look at. Now, Truth and Reconciliation might have got started in Canada in terms of one of the Supreme Court judges says, when it comes to treaties and made an arrangements on how this country was to be developed together, and the only way this country could be developed together is through treaties.
Mm-hmm.
So promises were made, allowing people come and live in these lands and territories. And then we were locked up. Then we were set aside, segregation, separation.
Yeah.
Now the judge says, you know, what we all have to do here is to work together. Let's face facts, he says. We're all not going anywhere. We all have to reconcile our relationship. So Canada, you got the honor of the crown. You have that responsibility. You failed. You have to embrace your responsibility. Now the Indigenous people themselves, we must make them as equal in our society as much as possible. Because even Sheila Fraser, back in those days, were saying the separation or the gap between Indigenous population and rest of Canada is 25 years.
Wow.
So, and that was 1996.
Wow.
So if we were to say, if we were to embrace that at that time in 1996, just think about it. There would be no gap today.
Right. If we had started addressing the gap back then, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just carries over.
Yeah. Like just
And then you have
compounds too, right?
Yeah, and then you have it switching off the responsibility to the next party or
Yeah.
next party. So it's a same old record, same old. So the judge was saying, we must come together and reconcile this relationship. Now, what was going on at that time was apartheid,
Mm-hmm.
South Africa.
Yeah.
They had borrowed the same laws that Canada did with Indigenous population and
Is that
applied
right?
it to their country.
So they modeled apartheid after the Canadian system
That's right.
of reservation.
That's
Wow. I did not know that. That's shocking.
It goes all the way to colonization around the world. Is you take over by a small population, you take over by creating the laws, and you divide everybody up with provinces,
Yeah.
and you give them a limited authority, but you don't give
Wow.
them too much. That's India.
Wow.
But that's getting back to South Africa. They did the same thing. They said they didn't call it reserves. They call it apartheid, or they're boxed in,
Right.
and their locations. Now, you're talking about millions and millions of population and they got a very limited, I would say, white population, British population, but they become their own government. South Africa is their own government.
Yeah.
There's going to be a boil point. Like, you got all this pressure from the world that says, change your apartheid system. I remember that from the 80s, all this sanctions and forcing them. It says,
Yeah.
allow the population to vote. Democracy must be done here.
Yeah.
And Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years in a very small boxed area. And he was just trying to fight for his people's rights, but he's a symbol of that movement.
Yeah.
So they locked him up. They kept him locked up.
Yeah.
Now, this is a critical time because now there's this pressure to say, give the population a chance to vote. But as part of the symbol, released Nelson Mandela.
Hmm.
And you would think you would come out of there with fists high and says, okay, let's go after them. You would think he would say, with all that bitterness and revenge, we're going to take over. We're going to just toss you guys aside. No, he didn't do that. He was thinking about what it is to be a human being.
Mm.
And when he was released, then they were going to allow voting. They voted him to be their first president. And his first task was to say, our country cannot move forward without truth, reconciliation, and healing.
Mm.
So he's announcing this is the way we're going to do it. So for those that were part of the system, there'll be a pardon, but we need your stories. We want to know why did you do what you did?
Right.
You know, was it why all the torture and why all the confinements and all that trauma that was created? We want to learn from your perspective why. Of course, there was the laws,
Sure.
but it also is because it could be psychological in terms of superiority, manifest destiny, and all that.
Mm.
But they want to do stories, but they wanted the stories that were impacted by all those laws. So they want to collect all the stories so we could learn from what happened.
Yeah.
The truth had to be told. It had to be taught in schools. But the thing is about it is that we need to heal. After learning all these things, we go, well, how do we heal? So there has to be those not only pardons, but there has to be a process of forgiveness, of understanding, inclusion. Together we're one. They still struggle, but that's just any government still struggles. Now Canada picked that out and says we're going to do the same thing, but they left out the healing part.
Yeah, that's fascinating that you mentioned that truth, reconciliation, and healing, and yet here it's just about truth and reconciliation. There's no mention of healing.
It's almost like let's just do this one phase, and forget the rest.
Yeah,
so
it's
like
it's lip service, like you were saying, the same as the apology. It's just and this has always been my concern with it, is that I think it's really great that we're spreading the truth about what actually happened. I think it's great that we're revisiting history and going, wait a second, why do we have a statue of this guy? Why are we celebrating this guy when we know what he did, the good, the bad, and the ugly? I think it's great that we're shedding light on this. I'm just concerned that it's being done for optics only, and that the actual reconciliation and healing pieces are never going to arrive unless we push and make them happen.
And I try to do that with a 30-minute PowerPoint. I've been busy for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And saying, what is reconciliation?
To
break it down. It down. So we talk about what it looks like, but also talk about what it's not.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I went to a cultural awareness for about 2 hours and now I'm good. That's not how it works.
Are there people who actually think that's what reconciliation looks like?
Yeah, they just think I'll just go through this. I did my part. Our organization sets it up and says, oh, we did our part. Wow. But reconciliation is actually now a federal holiday. It's actually the law of the land because there's federal mandate letters that are sent out to all the federal departments, federal agencies, anybody that gets federal funding.
Yeah.
And the letter says you must do your part. You can start with the call of 94 calls of actions to start there. But it says, what can you do, not only as a corporation or government, but as a person? So along the way, part of the calls of action is that there should be a federal holiday reflecting all this that needs to be done. And we went through that on the 30th.
Yeah.
But it went further by saying people are wearing red shirts, by recognizing the impact that children had for generations. That's part of the healing, is that to look at ourselves in terms of there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to trauma. Trauma is rapid. It's everywhere in our communities, in our workplaces, in our families.
Yeah.
But Canadians are also in denial because there is trauma for Canadians.
The oppressor and the oppressed are both
That's
traumatized.
right.
They're both chained together. They're both, you know what I mean? So even the oppressor is a victim in a sense. I know it's hard for somebody to say that if they've been oppressed, but that's sick for them too. It's a disease to be oppressing people. There's something wrong with the oppressor. There's a
That's
trauma
right.
there.
So,
They need healing as well.
and that's thus is the reason why you have healing to be added on.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And again, how can you reconcile without healing? How can you reconcile without forgiveness? I mean, those things are essential.
It's just like having an abusive situation. You're the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you're called out on it, but you want to fix the relationship up. But you know what? It takes works on both sides. In other words, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do to make this a better relationship?
Right.
So you just say, I went to a counselor. We're fine now. Ah, doesn't work that way.
No, it really
You got to
doesn't.
see you got to see the environment change, the
Yeah. Well,
conversation change.
yeah. You know, with Stephen Harper's apology and the little conversation that we just had on that subject, it reminds me, I have three kids. There are pictures in the background there, and they're constantly apologizing. Constantly apologizing. Oh yeah, hey, did you do this? Yeah, sorry. It's like, but you did it yesterday and the day before and the day before, and you keep saying sorry, but you keep doing it. And it seems like that's kind of like the MO of our government in a
It's
way, you
get out
know?
of jail card. It's a jail. Oh, I'm gonna
Sorry.
pay my get out of jail card on you.
Yeah, and so I always tell them now, show me that you're sorry. Don't tell me. I don't care about your words. Show me that you're sorry by not doing the thing again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so how can the government actually show that they're sorry? How can Canadians show that they're sorry? Not just say it, because it's one thing to use your words. What does it look like in reality, this reconciliation
Yeah.
piece?
There's a there's a website on CBC, I think, Beyond 984, Beyond the Call of Action,
Mm-hmm.
where people share all their creativity, all their stories, what they're doing in their schools, in their businesses, their corporations. So they're showing that this not one-off stuff. This never ends for us because the healing will take a longer process. Remember I talked about the 25-year gap?
Yeah.
I live in Winnipeg. I live in Manitoba where they teach Indigenous history and treaties in the school systems. Now, after 10 years, I see the difference. I feel the difference. I have hope for the future because children are gonna be receiving information that their older generation, their parents did not receive.
Mm-hmm.
They're creating a better society where diverse is being diverse is embraced, not focusing on our differences. But Canada is a big country.
Mm.
You want the whole country to do the same thing.
Yeah, right. So I got a question for you. From my perspective, what I would like to do is to not only learn about your cultures and your traditional ways, I would like to immerse myself in them, because learning about it as a quote unquote white person from the outside looking in, listening to it, I want to experience it and know it intimately so that I can help, because like people that look like me tried to wipe out your culture. And in my mind, the best thing that I can do is to help revive or strengthen or become a part of your culture so that I can actually help carry it forward and be a carrier of that culture. So, but there's a lot of talk these days about cultural appropriation and stuff like that. So I would like to get your thoughts on that, because I would love to be immersed and learn, not from the outside but from the inside, about your culture, about your traditions and all of that stuff. Does that sound like cultural appropriation for a person like me to do
No,
that,
it's
or is
just
that something that you guys
even
would welcome?
even Indigenous people themselves need reconciliation. They have to reconcile their pain,
Yeah.
their hurts, their pushing back. Because there was a time when a culture appreciation
Mm,
was an accepted norm.
yeah.
Now it's just like it's a confusion because now somebody's social media, everything blazes, everything could be
Mhm.
instant. Something goes wrong. They call it cultural appropriation. There is some truth to that though.
Absolutely, I've seen it,
But
but profiteering from another culture that's not your own, I think that's
we're just
probably,
about to go into Halloween.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. It does.
So
Do
you're going to
cultures
see it.
belong?
You're going to
Yeah,
see it. Are they still
yeah,
selling, to be a warrior, to be a maiden princess or
yeah,
something like that, or Pocahontas?
yeah,
But anyway, I'm trying to say, there are going to be those that are still going to be behaving badly.
yeah.
Now, the healing part for me, I do the truth. I'm very good with the truth. I like to create awareness. For me, for the healing is to understand from the Anishinaabe culture, we all came from the same place.
Mm-hmm.
We all came from the creator, all of creation. We all came from the same place. Now, the Anishinaabe believes that you can have many lives until you get it right.
Okay. Interesting.
So you're here on this earth for lessons.
Yeah.
You're here to, life is going to throw things at you, but what is the lessons? But when I say this, your spirit should know, your heart should know that what I'm saying makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good sign. Because what we are that blue flame of creation. It's in our stories. But what we are is that we have these different diversity, different peoples. So for our origin stories, there was 4 spirits that was taken to the Creator's garden, lowered so that they'll grow. They'll
Mm.
become many in this garden. That's diversity.
Yeah.
Creator wanted diversity. He didn't want one way. He didn't want one race. He didn't want one tree. Didn't want one plant, one animal. He wanted diversity, different colors, different shapes, different sizes, including the people. So one day when we do truly get together, we appreciate our diversity and not our differences. So for the Anishinaabe, the language is clear for us in a way that we need to get to that place.
Yeah.
That place is the 7th fire. That's what we call today the 7th fire, is how to be enlightened, how to be awakened, how to know that what I just said to you is true. Because the problems is that if you're looking at our differences, you're not getting anywhere. You're in a sludge. You're just not going to get anywhere. Where we need to be in this world, especially now, what's going to happen in the next few months, is that the world is going to turn to the Anishinaabe and say, we have a choice here. Let's stop the insanity. Canadians have an opportunity to be the leaders in this world.
Mm.
They need the help of the Anishinaabe, but we need to heal ourselves too along the way.
Mm.
So that's just to answer your question. So I am moving in toward the healing aspects of everything.
Yeah. Wow, that was a beautiful story. And as a spiritual explorer myself, the things that you just talked about, the 7th fire, awakening, realizing that we're all one people and one universe, really, and we're all just expressions of that creator, all of that stuff. It's fascinating to me that that's your tradition, because it's in India, it's in Samaria, Egypt. These are the same stories, just in slightly different garb, different cultural garb. Even the garden, right? I mean, you've got garden stories in the East, in the old world. There's all these different stories: the Garden of Eden, the Sumerian garden, where the gods created us so that we could be the caretakers of their garden, not so that we would go out and subjugate the world. We're here to tend the planet. That's one mythological story that's lost today. Everybody talks about go forth and subjugate the earth. No, 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 no. The gods created us so that we could prune their trees and till their soil and keep it looking nice. And here we are trashing the planet. So to me, it's just it's oh yeah, it's so inspiring to hear you talk about this stuff, because we really are one people.
Yeah. We had that same situation 500 years ago, more than that. It was our 5th fire, where there was an opportunity to have a universal brotherhood on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it something else? Because if you imagine that if we said that everything is alive, everything is a spirit, everything, the trees, the animals, we're all part of it.
Yeah.
Then somebody else with a closed mind says, you are the inferior ones. We got to do something about you. So they, along with not only needing more land and want to find more land, they says we got to convert you from your pagan ways, your heathen ways. Now, speed up 500 years later, we're at a crossroads again.
Mm-hmm.
This time they're paying attention to our stories, to our teachings, to our ceremonies. Because right now the whole world needs something like that
Yes.
to say we are one. This is our home. It's precious. You got to look after our planet. You got to look after our Mother Earth.
Hmm.
So we're at that crossroads.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fascinating to me that they, even if you look at it from the very traditional mainstream Christian view, whether you look at it from your traditional view or whether you look at it from a purely scientific perspective, whatever the case, the truth is this: we are all related. We are all family. Whether we came from Adam and Eve, whether we came from the great creator, whether we evolved from some hominid 4 million years ago, we all agree we came from the same source. We're all related. We are one family, one people, period. Doesn't even matter what your background is. Everybody agrees when you really break it down that way. So now it's like you said earlier, experiencing the truth of that. It's one thing to intellectually know, but to actually feel the truth of it in your bones, in your heart, to know that you and I are one, just different expressions of the same power, the same being. So how do you help people to that experience? It's one thing to tell the stories and convince people intellectually. How do you get somebody, or how do you guide someone to the experience of oneness and knowing, truly knowing that we are all one?
One of our teachers is in the animal world, we have teachers, and truth is the turtle.
Mm.
In our language, tabwe means the echo of your heart, truth.
Oh, beautiful.
So in our teachings, life is not just one-sided. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about honesty and bravery. No, 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 no. Life is about being challenged. So what is the opposite of truth? Is my way
Mm.
or one way, my way or the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got this, and it's all one energy. It
Yeah,
just moves. So it's not really polar. It's just like love and hate.
yeah.
It's still one energy. It just
Yes.
moves. Hot and cold. It still moves
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
are with things. So when you come to truth, you just try your best to help people move a little bit further towards that truth
Yeah.
versus being my one way. So that's where we are with things, is that all origin stories are truthful. They're all truthful. The creator wanted that diversity. He wanted a time when we get together and we talk about our truths, not saying that you're wrong or you're misplaced. Or so we have a tendency to argue all the time, debate and argue. When really, when somebody says, the sky is green, it's a beautiful green color. All you have to do is look up too. And it says, that's amazing how you see that.
Hmm.
Because automatically your instinct says, you're wrong, it's blue.
Yeah.
But we're all on our journey as human beings, individuals. Humanity is on a journey. So we just have to learn to embrace, each other. When I have a brother who believed the world was flat,
Okay.
and he always says, give me your best evidence. I look up, I see the moon, I see stars, I see the sun. But after a while, he realized that he wasn't fitting. His truth wasn't fitting.
Right.
So he moved on for something else.
I actually interviewed a flat earther on this podcast several years ago, and it was a very interesting conversation. And it kind of goes to show what you're talking about, which is everybody's got their own truth, right?
Yeah,
And if you really truly believe something in your heart, to you that's true. I mean, there's no one's going to
yeah,
be able to convince you otherwise. So, but
yeah.
your brother shifted to a different model of the
Well,
world.
the same people says, but the Earth has a hollow center in it. There's civilizations there and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what happens if you squish it? What happened to the hollow Earth theory? Anyway, I play
Yeah.
around with that sometimes.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be,
Well, you know what? By
but you know
asking
what?
questions, you're actually helping your brother,
But
and
since you're
he's
asking, this is what I think.
Yeah.
What happened to the ones that you squished up in the hollow earth people? Do you believe in the hollow earth? I think I do. Well, think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the Nazis escaped after World War II. They went into Antarctica, into the hollow earth, apparently, according to some people. But I don't my theory or my philosophy is that I don't know anything and I can't. There's stuff that I think I know, there's stuff that I
Okay.
know I don't know, and then there's stuff I don't even know I don't know. So there's layers to my ignorance. And so I like to just try to I deal in theories. It's like, okay, this is my theory, and until it's disproven, I'm going to use it because it seems to align with reality. But as soon as the evidence comes in and it's like, oh, I was incorrect about that, I'll switch to the next theory because I'm not that attached. I don't know. All I'm trying is to navigate life as best as I can, right? So
So my brother was very interesting.
I bet.
So instead of like trying to prove each other wrong, we hear each other. We
Yeah.
hear each other. So to me, that's interesting. You can see the green sky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me more. That's a really beautiful way of having those types of exchanges with people, Alan. I have to commend you on that because you're right. Most people, their instinct is to argue and debate, and by asking questions and being open to other people's viewpoints, a lot of amazing things happen.
Yeah. It's about releasing your mind. One of the teachings is that when you come to this earth, you had all that knowledge, but you have a reason for being to this earth, why you're traveling to this earth at this time. You have a plan, you know. But when you were born, you took your first breath, then the veil goes over.
Mm-hmm.
You have to rely on the people that you're going to be raised, the environment you're going to be raised, and so forth. So that's the life journey,
Mm-hmm.
is to explore it. Explore it. Where does it take you? That's the beauty of it. This earth school is a beauty of it. Not everybody's in the same grade.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, very
And then
accurate.
and then when you go back to spirit, you review it. And sometimes you say, oh, I guess I didn't do what I wanted to do. Our artist says, oh, that was fun. I really advanced myself. I can't wait to go back because I want to do this next time.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're all on our journey.
yeah. And you talked about having a purpose on this journey. You go in with a plan or with a mission. Do you happen to know perhaps what your plan, your mission was or is in this life?
Well, I just had a nice conversation with a friend who's very spiritual. He happened to be the other Indian, the East Indian.
Yes, yeah,
I'm the West Indian. So we have fun with that. We call each other brother.
yeah,
But he's
yeah.
very spiritual. And we talked about purpose because I was talking about how I shift. I went to a week long sacred healing retreat. I thought I did a lot of work on myself. That wasn't it. There was more to do. But there was this tremendous shift in terms of how I let go of my analytical mind. I'm very analytical, but I started letting it go and really open up my spirit. So he's seen a change in me where, I so things that I have to work on is don't worry so much about everything.
Hmm.
Breathe more, breathe deep, just flow, be present. So just to share with you, there's still a lot I need to do for the rest of my life. I got a long life, by the way. But that's what I try to do is say, how can I do more for myself? How
Mhm.
can I be a greater husband, a greater grandfather, a greater, co-worker, a greater, that's where I want to be. How can I be, how can I meet my purpose? So along the way, you start identifying what is your current value system.
Mhm.
So there was a great exercise that we did there was start off with 100, check off, bring it down to 25
Mhm.
values,
Yeah.
bring it down to 15, bring it down to 5.
Whoa.
And then he says, we're not done yet. Bring down to 1.
Wow.
So here we are. Well, it took a little, but it just started being obvious in terms of where I was, where I was coming from, what I'm doing today, and where do I want to be. And I just thought Well, I know I'm spiritual. Like we had these 13 things that define us in our medicine wheel,
Yeah.
and spirituality is number one for me. Number 13 have to be extended family because they're sometimes they hurt the most. But
Just
anyway, that's
family
why
in general, Alan. Just family in general, in my experience. But yeah, so extended too. Yeah.
well, my immediate family, I'm okay.
Oh, good, good.
It's
Yeah.
just the siblings that I grew up with. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
that's another story.
yeah.
But when it comes down to identifying who you are, it's I thought I was going to be a healer. I've been striving all these years to be that. Then it really came down to learning. The number one thing for me is to be a lifelong learner.
Mm,
I'm here to expand. I'm here to grow. I'm here to evolve. And for me, learning is everything. So that was my number one value. What followed from learning is that I became a teacher.
yeah.
I have passion to be a teacher. And then I said, oh, maybe healing was the way up there. It's the third one.
Mm,
But my friend this morning told me this. He took out a coin.
hmm.
Basically, here's a coin.
Yeah,
Here you go. There's a coin.
yeah,
Because there's your learning. You
yeah.
flipped it around. There's your teaching.
There you go.
And
There's,
then what holds it together is healing.
yeah, beautiful. It's all
Everything is
there.
healing.
Yeah, it's
It's
all
all
there.
there.
Yeah, good for you. Wow, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I followed my intuition and reached out to you because your presentation didn't have a lot of the spirituality, but I don't know if you checked out my channel. That's like the main subject. That's the number one
Oh,
topic of my videos and my interviews. Most of the time I'm interviewing people who've had spiritual awakenings, people who have had different experiences and they're now waking up, as you said. And
yeah.
becoming a bit more aware and conscious of their own stories, their own biases, and they're doing the work that you're describing. And so I had no inkling that this was part of your life or that this was something that you were into as well when I reached out to you. But I think part of me did because I was like, I have to talk to this guy. As soon as I heard you and your presentation, I was like, I got to reach out to this guy. And now I know why.
Well, that's part of the shift, a spiritual connection. So people will come for me for, say, I want advice, reconciliation, programming, history. Initially, they're drawn more than just that.
Mhm.
There was something they're drawn to, but it's a spiritual connection because by the time it happened on Thursday, person wanted to talk about what they want to do for training, and we didn't even talk about training.
Yeah.
For 2 hours, we're talking about for her what's going on with you is that spiritual connection. So out there in the public world, I'm mostly known as a facilitator, trainer, historian. But when those that are gets to know me, they know I'm doing healing work. I'm doing all kinds of methods, ways of healing. I teach it, and I'm actually practicing it. But the key thing to all of it is that we're connected spiritually. We
Mhm.
have a higher self that says, hey, look, pay attention to this room over here. There's a guy speaking there. Go talk to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this thing is pointing me out. Okay, here's the compass. Here's the dawn. Here's the magnesium. I mean, magnet.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and a lot of people in a few minutes sometimes will just break down and cry
Wow.
because they've been holding whatever they're holding back for so long that
Wow.
they kind of find a safe space where they just wanted to share where maybe they never had a chance to.
And you're
So it happens.
providing that safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are the safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a beautiful thing.
So I teach that everything is spirit. Manitou is how we say it. Everything's Manitou. Kichi Manitou is the great spirit,
Yeah.
but everything
Nice.
is spirit.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, everything's energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, you call it the great spirit. I call her the great teacher. I mean, it's just all words for the different or different words for the same source, the same power, the same.
Different language. I could have said God. I could have said the great
Absolutely.
source. I could have called it quantum physics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they're getting there. The scientists are a bit slow, but they're finally catching up to what your people and many ancient peoples have known for literally thousands of years. So it's nice to see the scientific community catching up finally and realizing that
Yeah,
it's all one energy as well. But yeah,
all
wow.
spirit.
So, is there a way that I can learn more about your culture, your myths, your stories, your rituals and traditions? Because this is something I didn't get a chance to talk to you about, but what I feel is missing in the Western world, if you want to call it that, is rites of passage, rituals, more rituals in our lives to mark the passing of the year and the seasons, the solstices and the equinoxes. We don't really have a lot of recognition of those types of events anymore. Whereas before, they were hallmarks of our lives. As a young child approaches like their teenage years, some kind of rite to transition from being a child to a teenager, and then from a teenager to an adult. All of these things are missing, and I feel that your culture still has a place for some of those things at the very least. And so I'm interested in learning more about your culture. I'm interested like I said, not just learning about it from the outside, but going and visiting and being with the people out, because we're all one people. They're my people. I want to learn about my people. You know what I mean? So what would you recommend for someone like me who wants to learn more, who wants to be connected more with different cultures and to learn and be a part of the reconciliation and healing work that you're talking about?
Well, there is a shift towards just talking about history
Mm-hmm.
or that timeline that I do.
Yeah.
I'm really, even my own people need to know what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the damage is done. We are just trying to recover, reclaim our who we are. So I'm very busy talking about our origin stories, what it is to be a human being, what is the gifts that the Creator gave us, why do we have a name, what's up with family, what is free will, by the way, what is
Oh,
purpose.
yeah. How can we get into all of this, Alan? Do you do videos on your YouTube channel? Like,
I do. I did a PowerPoint these days because COVID taught me how to teach it in a different way.
yeah, yeah.
So I go on Zoom or Teams and I tell the stories. I tell the Anishinaabe stories, our worldview, how we see things.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like universal. It's just like saying a fresh water, for instance. Oh, this is something. Oh, this is something new. And people are have a quench. They want to quench. What is spirit? Now, a lot of times I get parents that says my child is different. My child is struggling.
Mm-hmm.
My child has depression. My child has anxiety. My child is unease, anxiety. I said, those are the triple whammies you just described there. I know what's going on. Now, these are across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what family or what race. They says, I heard that you can help people understand what's going on in this world. And a lot of times since 1996, there has been signs of old souls. There's old souls like myself that are paving the way for others to receive them. But since 1996, anyone was born in 1996, the majority are old souls
Oh, wow.
that are here to save the planet.
Hmm.
But are they in the right place, in the right family, or in the right culture, right? So what they're going through is the motions of society. Society says you go to school, you
Yeah.
do your homework, you get a job, and they have the tremendous anxiety in terms of what's the future doesn't look good for them.
Mm-hmm.
There's something else. And I tell people like well, first of all, if it's depression, I says there's something in the past we have to fix, not fix up, we call it heal.
Mm-hmm.
Because depression is about the past. There's something there we have to clean up. Being at ease, uneased, um, anxious is the present.
Yeah.
Is it basically you're dealing with all these things at the same time, so that's your anxiety. But the big one is your anxiety is about the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you're worried about tomorrow, you're worried about next year, you're worried about everything in the that's in front of you.
Yeah.
So what we do is that we clean these things up, we release the energy, give it back to the creator, and then we talk about why are you here? What's your interest? Because we have a name for you.
Mm.
We call them the rainbow warriors.
Mm. Yeah.
They are all colors
Yeah.
are here for a common purpose. Others will call it indigo, or
Yep.
others will call it star seeds.
Yeah.
But us,
Yeah.
we call it indigo. No, not indigo, rainbow warriors.
Yeah.
And so they're seeking out how to work with spirit. A lot of them are empaths, so they are really overwhelmed
Yeah.
with everything in this world. So there's a lot of burden that they carry. So I'm there to help sort it out for them, how to protect themselves, but then to get balanced, balance to say the creator made you a co-creator, so you create the life that you want,
Mm.
create the world that you want. Don't you think you got to get to work now?
Yeah, I
Because
do.
you're not impacted by the world, or your society says you are. You're a victim of it.
Yeah.
When you're a co-creator, your power is unlimited.
Yeah. It's
How you
almost
want
like
to,
the circumstances that used to oppress you become like your canvas or
yeah,
your artistic materials. Now you can take those situations and those challenges and you can weave them together into something new and perhaps useful or insightful or even beautiful, right?
it is something that they already knew. That's what an old soul is. They something they already knew. They had
Mm,
their multi lives,
yeah.
but they just need somebody to say, step away from where your current circumstances is. Have
Yeah.
a look at it. Is this your true identity? Is this your true purpose?
Mm,
So you're bringing them at a higher level and saying, you know what? That's a program, and you can
yeah.
change the program.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So much to think about and a lot of actionable stuff in there as well, Alan. I really thank you for your gifts, your wisdom, your stories. And yeah, as I was saying, I'm going to plug anything that you'd like. So if you have a YouTube channel, a website, I know you have a website, but anything else that you'd like me to promote, I will put that in the description of the video below so that people can find you. And for my own personal interest, yeah, do you have a YouTube channel? Or did you say you did? Or
Well, there was a couple of videos shows me talk about history,
yeah.
but everybody that I have co-healers or people who have psychic abilities, people who are spiritually developed, they're all saying, Alan, you gotta put yourself out there in the world.
Yes.
So
I
you
will
just
jump into that and I will second or reaffirm that you if you don't currently have a YouTube channel where you can share these stories, these insights, the spirituality that you're sharing with me, please start now because it's
yeah,
good
because
stuff.
they said make a brochure. I do have a website that's currently it has to a little bit stuff has to be done, but that's the beginning. It's
Mhm.
called my lodge here north of Winnipeg is called GNU Healing Lodge. Now the I guess the website would be GNUlodge.com.
Okay.
But
How do I?
I'll send that to you in the email.
Yeah,
But
please
that's the
do.
beginning.
Yeah.
It just only shows that I've been using like learning about I'm a Reiki master or
Oh
Theta
wow.
healing, and I do all these things because my common denominator was my spirituality from the Anishinaabe ceremonies.
Hmm.
So I was pursuing what is energy, what is spirit,
Yeah.
and over through this experience in the last 8 years, it it's all good healing ways,
Yeah.
different ways of doing it.
That's right.
But what came to me was I have my own culture, my own identity, my own background to say, here's me to teach you what spirit is. Who are we?
Hmm.
What are we about? But here are some of the tools to help you, um, go through life.
Yeah.
And an ultimate goal is that I want everybody to be that light worker.
Hmm.
So we should be encouraging each other to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how you do it, right? I mean, you lead by example, you embody what you'd like to see more of in the world, and hopefully it triggers a chain of reaction that people will jump onto that.
we have our own prophecies. There's indigenous prophecies that speaks about this time.
Yeah.
And for us, the Anishinaabe, we were, uninterrupted. This recent change that happened to us is less than 500 years. In
Hmm.
my community, it's only 90 years.
Hmm.
It's interference of Canadian laws.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that we had that strong connection.
Yeah.
All those ceremonies like vision quest, spirit names, and all the pipe ceremonies, our sundance and sweat lodges and so forth. So we're reclaiming it in as a very fast pace.
Yeah. Good.
But it was meant to be shared in the garden, not in our own little part of a garden.
Right.
And that's where I come in.
Yeah.
I says, take the best of what we have from all over the garden.
Yeah. That's yes, you said it. You said it, Alan. That's exactly it. I mean, if you go through all these different traditions, I'm sure your East Indian friend uh, picks up on a lot of the same similarities, right? I mean, I'm a big fan of the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, which are ancient Sanskrit texts. It's saying the same thing you're saying, brother. It's the same truth, just in different, different songs, different versions, but it's the same energy experiencing itself in many different forms, but at the end of the day, it's the same energy, as you said, the same source. And to experience the truth of that is a beautiful moment. And yeah, I'm with you. My mission is also to help guide people to that experience, that knowing, not knowing that you are it, baby. There is nothing, no one else. You have it, you are it. And now get out there and help everybody else remember what they really are.
Yeah. The greatest journey is to move from here to here.
Amen. Yes, absolutely. Not an easy
And that,
journey either, right?
that was not easy because even
No.
recently I had to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. And do you mind sharing just as we close out what that was like for you, or what was behind
Well,
that sort of shift
in
from the head to the
closing,
heart?
there's a friend that created a computer matrix of asking you all these questions in terms of your life. There's
Hmm.
13 areas, and then it puts it together as like almost like a medicine wheel. It's not quite the equal quadrants,
Yeah.
but where you are in terms of like for me, I was very much in the 78. I was 78,
Hmm.
bunched together. Then of course there's these little ones that needs attention, like I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier. But that's pretty much I was happy. That's where I'm in with things. So yeah, we went and we shared healing and teachings, and then what we came out of it was my turn. I did my own healing. I had to clean up some other areas. So we did the assessment one more time. So I'm now 85, but it's all tightened up. And what it is it says, you understand who you are. You understand your own personal challenges, but it
Hmm.
understands your strengths too. So there was a tremendous shift. Even my friend this morning says, I can't believe how much you changed within a year. But he had some advice in terms of now you got to learn you don't breathe as good as you used to. I mean,
Mm.
you got to do breathing techniques in your healing, but all the time you need to breathe. You need to walk. So I know that physical activity was very low. It was something like 12. I
Okay.
know I got to do like get more healthier,
Yeah.
being physical.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the shift. Why? Because I had to learn about not to worry about the world.
Hmm.
I did have a tendency to put it on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I had to release that. You're gonna still be fine doing your best, but you don't have to carry the whole problems on your shoulders.
Right.
You do what you can. You're
Yes.
gonna do a lot where you are. So continue on with that. So I had, the key thing that transition for me to go clean up my life, like at residential schools and all that, was responsibility.
Okay.
It was a heavy word.
Hmm.
It was a burden.
Yeah.
I live with responsibility. Should I look after my mother who didn't look after me?
Hmm.
No. So there was a burden of that. Are
Yeah.
my siblings, are the oldest, do I look after them? Do I look after, You know, it was always when somebody asks for your help, I hesitate. I think about how can I get out of it. It was the word responsibility. So through the process, we stretch out the word. Alan, stretch out the word responsibility. Okay. Look at the word respond
Mm.
to your ability.
Ah, there it is.
There it is. There was no longer a burden because the ability is they're gonna come to you because of your ability.
Right.
So you respond to, do you have it? Do you have that ability? And of course, the question would be yes.
Hmm.
So you're creating boundaries and saying you can say yes and no. How one responds to it is either a yes or a no.
Right.
But you don't have to overthink it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to feel
So for
guilty
me,
if
it
the
was always
answer is no.
overthinking it.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Wow. Yeah,
So that was the
respond to your
release. Is the
ability.
yeah, my mind is overthinking things. My
Wow.
analytical mind is overthinking things.
Yeah.
When really a decision should be from the heart.
Yes. Yes.
Because your spirit knows,
Yeah.
your essence knows. So I no longer see a burden.
Hmm.
I see the opportunity to grow and learn, but be available.
Yeah.
So there's my abilities,
Yeah.
and I answer to it, yes or no.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to close off. Great parting words, and I think everybody could really use that shift. I think most of us are in our heads a lot, and most of us don't really know what it's like to come from the heart. So I think, yeah, beautiful experience to share with us. Thank you so much.
The one thing I'll leave in this session here is that find ways to meditate,
Hmm.
find ways to calm down. If you ever had a chance to get up between 3 o'clock or 5 a.m., it's the universe is trying to give you a message.
Okay.
Learn how to meditate, then go back to sleep. You're still gonna be refreshed. You're just allowing creation to be part of you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
learn to meditate.
Awesome. I agree. I meditate regularly, and I know that it's been a great help in my life. But yeah, great advice for anybody out there who may be thinking about meditating. They're not sure if it's worth the effort. Obviously, you seem to think so. I agree with you, because again, the obstacle to living from the heart is the mind, and meditation is a way to learn to pacify the mind, to quiet the mind, and to ultimately take some measure of control over the mind, so that you can get it out of the way and really live from the heart. So yeah, if you want to live from the heart, I think it's you got to deal with the mind at some point.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Alan, once again. And I'd love to talk to you some more because I feel like we didn't even really scratch the surface.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, we'll do it again.
I would love that. Yeah, you're a fascinating, wise, interesting person, and I'm really happy we got a chance to connect. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Namaste, as my friend said this morning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Namaste. Yes. Have a
But
good
he
day.
but he wanted to learn from me and how I said miigwech. So he
Miigwech.
said he learned how to say miigwech.
And what does
Which
miigwech
thank
mean?
you.
Oh,
It means thank
perfect.
you.
Yes,
Yeah.
miigwech. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great rest of your Saturday, Alan.